This episode is brought to you by BigMooseCoffeeCompany.co.
Well, welcome everybody to episode... Yeah.
You can't. No, we
It's the
can't do
same
the
thing.
numbers because we don't know. We never
It's
do.
the same thing. But one thing that is consistent in all of our episodes is that we start off by saying, Pal. This week's guest, we're welcoming her back. She was the second guest
second
we
ever.
ever had. So when we recorded last time, we were in a little dingy room in Sheffield with some £20 mics that didn't work. Now we're in a nicer room in Leeds with some mics that are quite expensive.
Quite considerably more than 20 quid a mic, yeah.
But they still don't work.
But they still don't work now. So, I mean, we're hoping that you guys are realising that they at least sound better when they do.
Yeah. So we are actually speaking now with the mics in our mouth to make sure that you've got the
me
sound.
and this mic got one thing.
And a lot of things has happened to this guest since we last spoke to her. But I think we don't need to give her an introduction because everyone in the running sphere at least knows who this person is. If you want to go and grab a bio, you can listen to our last episode, which will bring you up to speed. But I'm delighted to bring into the studio the wonderful Mimi Anderson. Hey! Hello, Mimi.
Hello.
As if
Hi,
we didn't
guys,
go
how are
with
you doing?
Marvellous.
Yeah, sure. I'm off brand already. Not wonderful. She's marvellous.
I know, tut.
The amount of times we hear that branding as well.
Yeah.
Okay. The marvellous Mimi Anderson.
Oh, no, you're comfy.
How you doing, Mimi? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, actually. I'm good. I had to do a race today on my turbo, and I have to say it absolutely killed me. But never mind.
Is that
So,
with
yeah,
Zwift?
Zwift. Oh, I love Zwift. Do you use Zwift?
Yes, I did. I ended up having a small rage in the setup, like all the faffing and things like that. But once I was set up, yeah, I had what was supposed to be a gentle ride, and then I started racing a bunch of people from Korea and the Netherlands, and it turned into an hour-long sweat fest. I think that's the whole premise of Zwift,
You're too
right?
competitive for something like that. You're supposed to see it as a community and drive each other forward, but you just want to mow down everybody.
So I think
But that's the point, isn't it? You see somebody in front, you got to go and get them, haven't you? So yeah, I love it.
Oh God, it's just me. I'm the under-competitive one.
I think once a competitor, always a competitor, right? It's just the vessel in which you do it. So, Mimi, I think to get to the whole Zwift story, this is probably something you wouldn't have used back. It wasn't even available.
2016 when we
Probably wasn't even available back in 2016. But let's have a little catch up with where we are since we last spoke. So the last time we spoke to you, I think you was gearing up for probably one of the biggest runs that you was going to do of your life, right?
Yeah, I was. I was gearing up for sort of running across America, which is, I was going for a world record. So for me, this was the biggest, it was the biggest challenge I'd ever set myself. And so it really was going to test me in ways that I could never have imagined, actually. You can plan things, you can train. I had to postpone it once. I was due to actually start originally in 2016 in September. But I had a torn meniscus, which actually, funny enough, happened on the spine 3 years earlier. So I had to have that sorted out. So I rehabbed myself massively well. I mean, I had Kent University helping me and various other people. So I did it all absolutely spot on and perfectly. And so set off on the 7th of September 2017.
Yeah, and I think when you last spoke to us, you was in really good shape actually, and mentally and physically, wasn't you? You was ready to rock, and I think that you were days, I think, actually out from flying. So you had all these months of prep. Obviously, you had it was years of prep really. You had the injuries and things like that. You flew to America. What happened? How did it go?
Well, I set off at 6 a.m. on the 7th. And, it's that feeling with any race or any competition that you do. You're on that start line. So I had to have people there to verify the fact that I'd actually started, and I had my crew, and there was a countdown, and as soon as they said right go, flicked on my watch, and the heart rate that had been excessively high at that point just started calming down. It was really weird. It was just so nice that you've had all this build up, all the training, which quite frankly becomes quite boring after a while. And then suddenly you're off, and there is nothing you can do about it. Your world record has begun, and you now just have to keep running. So my aim was to try and do 57 miles every single day, averaging out over the 50 days that I'd set myself. Unfortunately, on the 40th day, I was beginning, I don't know, from about 4 weeks, having some slight issues with my right leg. I had physios and stuff there who were fantastic. So I was being taped up, and the tape would work one day, then it wouldn't work the next day. But it never occurred to me that it was my knee, because it wasn't coming from my knee. It was coming from everywhere else on the leg, but not the knee. So when I had the MRI scan on day 40, I'd only done 16 very, very slow miles at that stage. They took me to the hospital to have a scan, and the scan showed that I had no cartilage at all on the outside of my knee. So it was bone on bone, which is what the pain was. And I had bone edema as well, so top and bottom of my knee. So my bones had gone white on the scan. And he said to me that if, I had two options. I could continue. He was he never said that I couldn't continue. But he said, if you did continue, the chances are you'll cause multiple stress fractures because of the bone edema. Your bone becomes quite weak. I can give you an injection, but that might not last, but it could cause also even more damage. And then he left me in the room, and he went out and he talked to my husband and the other crew, and he basically said to my husband that if I was to continue, the chances were pretty high that I would end up going home in a wheelchair and having to have a total knee replacement. Now, I didn't obviously know that bit, but with all the information that I did have, it took me over an hour to make that decision to stop. It still upsets me now.
Yeah.
It was that pivotal moment in my life. It was just horrible, horrible, horrible. And you do feel, it never occurred to me. It did. But when you set off on these challenges, you have to have a sort of self-belief that you can do it. Because if you doubt it in any way, then at some stage that will start eating into you, and you then won't succeed. So I had to believe that I could do it, and I knew that 57 miles every day was possible to do. I knew that was possible. What I didn't know, that my knee was going to not like it. So I made the right decision to stop, but it was hard, and I did feel like a complete failure. I felt very ashamed of myself, and I just had to sort of hide away for a little bit, actually. So we stayed in New York, which I didn't particularly enjoy, but I just couldn't come home at that stage, so I had to hide.
Yeah, it's so much to take in, isn't it? And the go-to reaction, which I'm sure you heard a lot of at the time, is like, oh well, Mimi, you're doing something that is extraordinary, and not many people attempt this, and there's not really anything you can say to someone in that situation that's going to help, especially with someone like an athlete's mindset like yourself. I don't think there is anything that someone can say in that situation that's going to make you feel better. So New York's always going to feel bitter because you're there in a way that you didn't want to be. But I think if we just rewind back a little bit, just before you received the news, because the thing that you said about believing in yourself, I think obviously you would have had some self-belief going into this because of the experience that you had. But on adventures, especially the Transamerica, most of the people kind of fall out of those attempts in the first week, don't they? Because they go for big mileage, body breaks, and even Pete Kostelnik, who broke the record a few years ago, did break and just managed to cling on. I think with him, it was more of just even admittedly from his own team. I think they admitted that it was just too much too soon, too hard mileage. And once he slowed up, he managed to kind of continue. Your confidence must have been building up to day 40, getting over that kind of first week or two. You must have been getting into a nice rhythm, and to get that news, which isn't a bit of news that, oh, it's a muscle or ligament damage that's happened in the short term. This sounds like it was damage that's maybe been done over a long period of time. So it's completely out of your control.
Yeah, totally and utterly out of my control. And it was, perhaps I'm sure some people would have sat there back at home and sort of said, well, if it was me, I only had 13 days left of running, so only, but, in the sort of the contents of the journey, 13 days isn't very long. And I'd covered 3/4 of the way across this extraordinary country. But the pain, I mean, I can't even begin to describe the pain that I had. I mean, I remember at one stage the doctors actually gave me some morphine. I didn't run on the morphine, I'd just like to say. And even that didn't work. So if morphine's not going to work, then nothing is. It was very, very intense, the pain. I could block it off to a certain extent.
I don't think anyone would have, or many people would have questioned that just purely on your pedigree. If Mimi can get through this and double bad water and do that, if Mimi is stopping, it's a serious thing. So, my personal reflection when I can remember back to the day that I saw you post that up, my head was just, I could just kind of, I could feel it with you to a degree, because I think the fact that it's taken away from you out of your control is horrible in a way. But surely at the same time, you gave absolutely everything. And you, of course, made the right decision, because going home in a wheelchair or having complete knee reconstruction is not worth any record, right?
No, it's not. I was tempted. Has to be said, but I think, again, I think that's just setting such a bad example actually to everybody. You can run through certain injuries, but I think an injury like that, I was 50, what was I, 55 or something at the time, and to come home and have to have a knee replacement at 55 so that I could carry on running. I think, how long would that knee replacement last? And you can only have 2 knee replacements. So, I know they last now for about 20 years, but would they last for 20 years if I wanted to continue doing my long events, which is why I would have had it done in the first place. So, it was a very, very hard decision. And, I had some lovely messages from people, private messages as well as things on Facebook and Instagram and stuff, which was lovely, but it was, it was crap, actually. It was crap.
No, of course. And we're sorry to drag you back through it again this far down the line.
But no, I feel like, and I'm sure you're doing it now in your talks, it's part of the journey of ultra running, right? Everyone's got that story of up and down. And obviously you came back to the UK after all that, and I bet there was a large period of reflection. What was the kind of next steps once you got back to the UK?
Well, recovering. I've got a fantastic osteopath. I'd lost an awful lot of weight. My crew were fab. I ate a huge amount of food, so I don't want people to think that I didn't eat food. I ate a huge amount of food, but my body just seems to sort of lose weight sort of quite quickly. So I wasn't in I couldn't do anything for quite a few months, actually, because I wasn't allowed to do anything until I put the weight on. And quite honestly, I was in no shape to do anything at all. I could barely walk. So I used to make trips to the swimming pool, and all I was allowed to do in the pool was literally walk around in circles. And all these little old ladies used to laugh at me. And but they've been great because they're part of my journey now. So, they've been fantastic. But I think for me, it was trying to come to terms with the fact that I wouldn't be able to run the distances that I had done for 20 years. And that was, it was like a grieving process, actually. And I did find myself going into this big, big, dark place. And I don't suffer from depression. I mean, I had an eating disorder and things, but I've never sort of really had any mental health issues. But this was, I found, a real struggle to come to terms with. And I found that I was getting quite snappy and moody and grumpy, well, grumpier than normal. And I didn't sort of realize why. And of course, I then, when I did have time to think about it, or I was able to think about it, I realized that actually it was all part of this sort of grieving process. And if I didn't do something about it and pull myself out of it, that it would impact not just myself, but also Tim and my kids and my grandchildren and my friends. And I thought, actually, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to my husband anyway. It's not fair. So I had to dust myself down, pick myself up, and I put it out there on Facebook that I was I was going to learn how to overcome my fear of water, which is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my entire life. So, they always say, don't they, when one door closes, if you look hard enough, there is always another one waiting to be opened. So I just had to search for it. So I learnt how to swim, which wasn't easy. My first lesson was literally blowing bubbles in the water, and I didn't even like that. And then my other one was I spoke to Mark Cobain, because he has similar issues with his knees. And I knew that he wouldn't, dress it all up and be all fluffy clouds and, everything. He would tell me exactly as it is, which is what I needed to hear. And he said, look, Mimi, there's no point pretending that you're going to be able to run these distances because you're going to cause more damage. And we had a long, long chat. And he said, why don't you enter Land's End to John O'Groats bike ride? And anyway, I did look at it, and I kept on putting it off, actually. I thought, God, I can't ride a bike that far. Why would anybody want to ride a bicycle, just under 1,000 miles? How ridiculous is that? Anyway, I signed up for it, and I didn't even have a bike at the time. So that's how my next journey has then started.
So a transition then from running, kind of, like you said, the grieving process, then there was a bit of bootstraps that needed to be pulled, I suppose. And you've always had, like you say, good support from family and friends. And then falling into swimming, cycling, and it's almost like two completely different adventures you're starting to go on now. Do you think the conversation with Mark was just that there was very few people that had been through that kind of journey that you could relate to?
Yes, possibly, because I know that. There are a few people out there who've got knee issues and everything, and it's their decision. They decided they're going to keep on running. I don't know what their prognosis and things. Then it's probably very different to mine. But I knew that Mark had a similar one to me, and he's fairly similar. Some mental attitude to me as well. He doesn't give up easily and doesn't give up without a fight. So I knew that he would be honest with me, and I'd rather somebody was honest than dress it up going, but Mimi, you will run again. You'll do. And yes, I do run, but I can't go out and run 100 miles. I can do 10K now, and I'm chuffed to bits with that. So,
yeah, but that was the result of a good decision you made back in a hospital, right?
Absolutely. And, and I have to manage my knee quite well in terms of, if I overdo it, I can then actually feel my knee. So I'm very, very careful about what I do. But I did miss the adventure side. I did miss the camaraderie, what I had with the running suddenly wasn't there anymore. And I found that quite difficult as well.
So do you still consider yourself a runner who cycles and swims, or are you starting to feel like a cyclist or swimmer yet? How far on those journeys are you? I'm so not a swimmer.
Well, I call myself a bikelist, because a bikelist, because I see people on their bikes, their cycles, looking terribly professional, and I think, I don't look like that. I sort of do now. It's a bit depressing, but I still call myself a bikelist. So I'm more of a bicyclist than a runner now. So I'm beginning to transition into the other world a bit.
And do you think that's because there's a lot of shared assets, I suppose, with both of them? So obviously a Land's End to John O'Groats journey you've done before.
Yes, and I did it on the 10th anniversary actually of the world record. So
amazing.
And it was nice going the other way around. So yeah, so that was a positive, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose you're still getting a lot of shared experiences, obviously, like the sense of adventure. I think I read in your blogs just before we started, and I can actually remember following the post when it happened, but you went on a larger bike ride after that, didn't you, down America?
Oh, yes, the Pacific Coast Highway. Absolutely fantastic. I did it with my friend Kat, who I have to say is very good on the hills. She lives in the Peak District. And, you know, there would be me going up a hill with, bear in mind, we got all our panniers and stuff on the bikes. And Pebbles, my bike, and I would be going up this hill. And I was thinking, do you know, Mimi, you're doing quite well here. You have improved. No problems at all. And Kat would just go sailing by and she'd go, oh, this is really tough, isn't it, Mimi? Okay, really? Oh, gosh.
Everyone's got one of those friends.
Yeah, that's probably karma for the time that you lapped people on Badwater and Spartathlon. And
yeah, this is true.
Yeah, no, that probably is. But anyway, but it did make me work harder. So, no, she was great. And that was a very special trip. So I think if I can it's quite difficult with cycling though, because I want to be more self-sufficient. So, you know, with the running, Tim could come out and he would either crew the race or support me or whatever. Whereas cycling, it's slightly more difficult.
Yeah. And I there's not so much a market for, as far as I'm aware, I'm not so much a cyclist enthusiast, as maybe you are at the minute, but to my knowledge, there's not a lot of a commercial enduro bike races out there, are there really, in comparison to the whole multi-day running?
No, but it's quite interesting. The more, you know, you delve into it, I mean, there are loads of events that I don't know about, but the more you delve into it, there are quite a few big events, cycling events actually around the world, which are self-sufficient. There's one going on in Rwanda at the moment. There's Audax events. Have you heard of Audax? It's like the Long Distance Walkers Association, but for bikes.
Okay.
And they do lots of stuff. There you go. God, I'm sounding like a right geek, aren't I? I don't understand bikes at all, can I just say?
When you start talking gear sets, that's when you've...
no, you see, that's the bit I don't understand. I had to go to my bike shop and say, I don't understand this. What does it mean? And they go, for goodness sake, Mimi, just ride the bike. Oh, all right.
So for those that don't know about the Pacific Trail, testing my knowledge here, Vancouver to the Mexican border, is that right?
Yeah, all the way down through Oregon and things. Yeah, and actually what was really nice is coming down towards the border. Of course, you see Trump's wall, which actually looked quite nice. And then when we get to the border, the security guard, there's sort of a no man's land there, and he actually let us through. And as we went, we were in the middle of this no man's land taking a few photographs. Somebody was trying to get over the fence on the other side, so we had to go back through again. But yeah, no, it was great. It was really fantastic. Loved it.
Well, and
it's not necessarily what we expected for the highlights of the trip. But...
Oh no, I can give you lots more, but you know.
Come on, get in the. I just want people to get over that wall just to prove him wrong. But it must have been great just to be back out there and have that sense of adventure in a self-sufficient way, and just seeing the sights, right? Especially. You were back in the country that the last time you were there, you had such negative experience of. So hopefully that's made you love America again.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have to say, I've never disliked America because it's. I was very lucky that the people who came out and ran with me and you know supported us and you know let us put our RVs on their land and all of that were absolutely fantastic. So you know from that respect, they were great. When I did the Pacific Coast Highway, I remember there was one occasion where we were camping and, we camped most nights, but this particular camp, we'd cycled just under 100 miles to get there and we got there and the sun was still shining. So, of course, we camped pitched our tents right in the middle of this sort of green patch, well away from everywhere else, just because we wanted to get the last bits of the sun. And we had the happy clappy lot over to our left-hand side. And I said to Kat, I really hope that they don't do that all night because this could be quite tedious. Anyway, bless them. They came over and they invited us to supper. And they were great. So it's amazing, isn't it? Never judge a book by its cover and write somebody off just because they're happy clappy. They were fab. They looked after us very well. So
amazing. And that's what those kind of experiences bring out best, right? You visit places that you probably would never visit by any other method. You get to meet people that you probably wouldn't ever meet. And you tell stories, right? And the only thing that's changed from the adventures you had before was just the vessel of transport.
Yeah, no, that's true. It is true. So it was like a very long multi-day race. And it was, it is. So, when you finish at camp at the end of day 1, 2, or 3, when you're running, you sit down, you chat to people, you tell people about your day. And, it's exactly the same with Kat and I. We'd meet people and chat and, enjoy it. And I think that's what these experiences are all about.
And have you got anything lined up off the back of that? And you and Kat grabbing your bikes and going out anywhere else? There's other countries to conquer?
Oh, there's loads of other countries. This is going to sound really pathetic, isn't it? But actually, I'm sort of a bit nervous about sort of going off and doing a lot of adventures on my own. Mm. Pathetic, isn't it? Because I'm not used to my bike. When you go running, it's just you and your body. Yep. You can put a backpack on and off you go. But with Pebbles or Sylvia, my bikes all have names. It's very sad. It's mechanical bits, isn't it, that could go wrong, and you have to put it in a box, to put it in a plane, to unbox it, and I mean the whole thing. So I'm getting used to it. But yeah, we're doing the Pacific Coast Highway. Not Pacific Coast, that's the one we've just done. We're doing the North Coast 500 in April, over 5 days.
That's the one, the Inverness to around Scotland one. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So Mark Bowman did it in 37 hours.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. We're not sort of going for that one. We're doing it over 5 days. So basically, we're doing 100 miles a day.
Yeah, that'll be stunning. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to cycle that whole northern route. We have both run the bit down the east coast, and the west coast I've cycled. Oh yeah, you're in for a treat.
Oh no, good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And apparently, I think we've got the longest climb in the UK or something.
Oh wow!
On the first day, yeah.
Where do you start then? Is it Inverness and you go westward?
Yeah, Inverness west and round, and then back to Inverness again.
Amazing. With all the faff with cycling, the good thing, I suppose, we'll probably just talk. We've talked about like the adventure transition, but I think Will is sniffing that he wants to know about the training aspect of this.
Yeah.
The one thing that I got from the limited road biking I've done is that's nice compared to running is the fact that if you go out on a training run, you've got to go for a limited kind of loop. There's only so far you can go out, and you have to be a bit adventurous. Maybe you'll drive somewhere to run back and all these kind of things. But on a bike, when you do a training session, you can be so far away in 6 hours. That must have been quite nice when you're doing your training, the fact that it just opens up all these new routes, and you can, like, for example, from here in 6 hours, I could be at the seaside. There's no way I could do that running. Did the whole training become more enjoyable? Because you did say that obviously when you were doing a lot of the running, it was getting quite repetitive. Did you feel like it was a whole new lease of kind of training motivation for you?
Yeah, no, it was actually. It was, and again, I had to, like the running, you have to build up the sort of the distances. But yes, I mean, I can get on my bike and I can go and do 60, 70, 100 miles, and it's amazing how far. Even doing a big loop, it's amazing how far. It can. I don't know whether you can hear that. Sorry. My thing is talking. Hang on. Hang on. Go away. Sorry. You have to ask that again because Alexa turned this on. That was Alexa.
How dare she?
They're invading.
Sorry. You can't hear her, can you?
Just about.
No, she's turned off now. Sorry. Ask me that again. Sorry.
No worries.
What was it? Oh, yeah, motivation with your training, because you can get far in 6 hours on a big loop.
You can get a long way away.
Yeah, that's where we were.
Yeah, you can, and that bit I've enjoyed. I mean, I think initially it took me quite a lot of confidence actually just going out on the bike, which sounds really silly. When you go out running, doesn't matter whether it's road or trail, usually it'd be trail, but you actually don't need to concentrate on any traffic or potholes or anything like that. Whereas when you're on a bike, you're having to concentrate quite hard on everything that's going around you. But I've now got more confident with that. So, that's sort of nice. But yeah, I do enjoy going out. And when you come back, you think, oh, that was fab. But it is a bit frustrating sometimes, because you can go out and do a quick hour running. And actually that's a pretty good session. But to do the equivalent on a bike is about 2.5 hours.
I suppose that's where Zwift comes in, right?
Yeah, it does take longer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's where Zwift comes in, though, just for those hours and just to get those blasts out that you need to do. Yeah,
exactly. And I do enjoy it. And I go cycling most days. If it's not outside, it's on the turbo. In the summer, I'll be outside most of the time.
So I think this sort of brings us round to what does a training week now look like compared to what a training week would have looked like for you back in 2016 when we last spoke?
2016 was 6 days of running with long days and, the normal sort of stuff for an endurance event. But my routine now is I have 3 swimming sessions a week, which lasts for about an hour. Can you imagine being in the pool for an hour? Oh,
yeah, apologies to all those swimmers out there, but we don't sense Mimi's going to have a lot of good stuff to say about being in the pool.
No, I do enjoy it, but it has been such hard work. It really has. When you're learning to swim the front crawl as an adult, it's quite tough because it's very technical.
You're coming at this from an angle as well where, and I'm sorry to interject, but for some people getting in the pool in the first, as an adult for the first time is going to be sort of a tremendously difficult experience mentally. But you're sort of also going in there having to start another sport from the beginning when you were, a runner of your caliber. Everyone knows who Mimi Anderson is. Did you find that tough to get going again, or were you just glad to be back into another challenge?
No, I found it really frustrating. They used to laugh at me in the pool, actually, because Kevin, so my coach, would he was great. He basically started me from scratch, blowing the bubbles. So the progress initially was slightly faster. And of course, then it sort of slows right down. But I used to get really angry with myself. So, I would do a length and then, manage to do another one. And I'd come back and the lifeguard would look at me and go, "It's all right, Mimi. No, you managed it." And I'd just be really cross with myself because I got the movement wrong, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, So, I used to get very angry with myself. I'm much better now. But I do find it very frustrating. Yeah.
Athlete mentality never goes away.
Oh, it's bad though, isn't it? Sometimes it's bad. You should just go with the flow sometimes and just relax. And I do find it quite difficult.
But I suppose you've had to, in large parts, suppress a lot of that anyway while you're learning and stuff. So little bouts of that surely aren't going to harm you. I imagine there's, over the last couple of years as you've been transitioning into new sports, there's had to been a lot of mental discipline on your side where you're like, "No, Mimi, be patient. No, come on, you can do this." I bet there's been, in some ways, it's probably been tougher than some of the running journeys that you've been on.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, the cycling, not quite so much, but the swimming certainly has been, God, I've had highs and lows and, as you do with running, everything in between with the swimming. It's just, I went and had a swimming session last night with the Tri Club. Get me, part of a Tri Club now, for goodness sake. And they're great. They're absolutely fab. And you've got some great runners there and some great cyclists and some, obviously some very good swimmers. But there are also people like me who aren't that good at swimming. So actually that's quite nice to realise that you're not the only one that is a bit of a numpty in the swimming pool and just finds it a little bit difficult. So, and so you do get quite a lot of support. So that, I quite like that. That's nice.
So what would your advice be for, maybe we have someone listening right now that has been plagued with injuries through their running. It could be through anything. They may have recently been given the news or kind of come to the realization that they might not be able to do the sport they love forever, and they might be looking at other ideas, or maybe even not got as far as looking at other ideas. What would you say to them? What's the bit of advice that you wish you had?
I mean, well, I've always had friends actually who've always said, you need to think about, what you're going to do when you're not going to run, which of course I paid no attention to whatsoever because I was invincible, wasn't I? But I think really it's let whatever the issue is, sort of, get processed into your brain, and if you're injured, go and do some cross training, get on a bike at the gym if you haven't got your own, or go and try swimming. There's always a sport or something that you can do while you're unable to run. There always is. You've just got to look a little bit harder for it. Yes, I do miss my running, but actually cycling and the swimming is not so bad. I quite enjoy the cycling now with the adventures. So I think it's, give something else a go. It might seem a bit scary. It's just scary to me still, which is pathetic really, but it is. But once you get going, you meet other people and, I still wave like a runner, whereas all the cyclists wave like cyclists, they just lift up one of the fingers or something, whereas I'm complete gusto, But I think, there is always, as I said before, when one door closes or even semi-closes, that if you look hard enough, there's always another one just waiting to be nudged open. And, just go and try something else. Otherwise, you'll get very frustrated if you've done a lot of running, or whatever your sport is, to then have nothing to look forward to. I like to have a goal. So whether that's learning how to swim or doing my Land's End to John O'Groats or the Pacific Coast Highway, it's quite nice having goals to aim for.
And I think that goes with, we do have some listeners that come into the podcast that they've never done endurance events. They're just kind of interested and intrigued by it. I think that ethos carries across in everything, doesn't it? Of have a goal, as they say up here in Yorkshire, out's better than nout.
Exactly.
You can, as long as you're doing something that is progressing you, it's better than just being sat there. And I think when you look at your career to date, Mimi, I think a lot of people are going to draw the inspiration from the obvious inspiration they can draw from you in your earlier days of your career, where you was being the first to do things, kind of pioneering in the ultra event. Like we said in the last episode, you was doing the MDS when there was no information about it, and you just rocked up in a desert and everyone kind of was raising their eyebrows. You've come from that, and you're still moving into a place where people can draw inspiration from you to go across multi-sports, multidiscipline, because the principle's still the same. Challenge yourself and go out and find adventures.
Yeah, I think it is. Everybody's adventures are different. It doesn't have to be the endurance stuff that we all do. It can be, even building yourself up to, I mean, for goodness sake, I had to learn how to run again, technically, after I got back from America. And I remember my very first run that I did, that when I was allowed to actually give it a go. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I took myself off to the forest and I thought, right, we're just going to do a couple of minutes running. That's all we're going to do, just to see what it's like. And I kept on walking and I kept on walking because I thought, well, if I go into a run and the pain comes back, then I'm back to square one again, aren't I? And I in my head, I was really fighting all these demons to not run and just pretend that it's going to be okay. Anyway, eventually I managed to pick up the pace a bit and I ran, and the pain wasn't there. And I just had to stop and burst into tears because it was, just being able to run short distances, 5K, 5 miles, to me is just fantastic. And I never thought that I'd be able to do that. So, I think there's always a silver lining, isn't there, with everything?
Yeah. I think you being so in tune with your body over the years was that you was able to make the right decision. And that was probably the moment it all fell into place, right? So well done you for having,
thank you.
having that sensible head on in that room. Cause,
that's a gold star.
Yeah. Smiley face for Mimi.
It's a tremendously difficult thing to do, to be self-aware enough to take yourself out of the frustration and the anger and stuff. You only need to talk to someone who's just DNF'd out of a big race. There's a lot of beating yourself up and you get wedged in the moment and I should have done this, I should have done that. You've walked away from a very, very very, very big DNF situation there and taken something very positive about it. And there's a lot of positive to be taken from that for anyone who's coming back from a big injury. But also, it's like you say, you've just put yourself into a swimming pool for about the first time in your 50s. That's a really difficult thing, and definitely something that stands in the way of a lot of adults that want to get into sport for the first time. So there's a lot to be taken from your experience there as well. I mean, Are there particular groups that people can go to if they're, 40 or 50 odd year old and thinking, I'm going to start swimming now?
Well, I think, for me, it was, actually, I was very lucky. I don't know of any groups, but I mean, I think, your local swimming pool is a good place to start. For cycling, there are loads for the women out there, because I know specifically it's quite difficult sometimes or intimidating for women to go out and do a bike, join a club and do a bike ride, because everybody's so, they're so fast, and you're thinking, oh my God, I can't do that. But there are breeze events all over the country where you literally go out and do 5-10 miles, very, very easy. And so it's a good introduction to cycling. And, running, obviously you've got your park runs and stuff like that. But it's, I think people... Everybody DNFs at some stage, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Was that actually your first one?
No. I've had most of my DNFs have been quite epic, actually. I did I did my first Land's End to John O'Groats. I DNF'd after 200 miles because I did something to my hip, and I remember I had I think a physio who came out, or an osteopath who came out to see me, and she treated me and then said, right, I just want to see you walking, Mimi. And it was pissing down with rain and I could barely walk. And she said, well, Mimi, you're going to cause yourself ridiculous amounts of damage if you carry on, and you're not going to get the record. So I had to pull out of that. So that's when I then thought, right, you're going to go back the next year. And then I did my double Spartathlon, and I had an epic failure on that one. But I went back a couple of years later and completed it. So I think, DNFs I always think of them as, they're quite good. They're learning curves for DNFs. They're not negatives. If you didn't put the training in, then yes, you've got nobody to blame but yourself. But I think you can, if you look at the race that you did and ask the questions, why do you really think that you DNF, Mimi? Was it because you weren't in the right place? Was it because you hadn't done the training? Did you not eat enough? So just go through all the reasons, learn from them, and then go back, and your next race, you'll have learned some valuable lessons.
Yeah, and that's it. I think it's everyone has one. If every athlete that put themselves out there, especially at the top of the game, will always have them, and you have to learn from the best when they happen and move on. And
absolutely.
If your position arises that your circumstance changes, go down your local pool and start blowing bubbles. I went all West Ham then.
Yeah, I like that.
My family are all from Bethnal Green, so when you're saying blowing bubbles, as a West Ham fan, my hands started reaching out, and I was starting to get a bit West Ham then. So it finally just escaped at me then. Mimi, I feel like we could just speak all day, but sadly, the timing wizards on our podcast are starting to when I say timing wizard, that's what I have for Will.
I'm starting to see the alarm lights go off on some of the cameras in the background.
All of our cameras are starting to melt and things. Mimi, thank you so much for spending the time with us this afternoon.
That's a pleasure.
For all those that are listening, Mimi, you can reach out to her on social. She doesn't take long to find if you start typing her into Google and things. Incredible lady with an incredible story. If it's the first time that you're tuning in and hearing of her, Mimi's got a book. I can't remember the name. Bad podcast host.
Beyond Impossible.
Beyond Impossible. There we go.
Yeah, that was on my bedside table for ages, actually.
So close to our name, we should not have forgotten that at all.
Exactly.
Sorry about that, Mimi. That was all Kris.
Easily done.
If you are a runner and looking for experience on our series and looking for experience, Mimi did our Ice Ultra 4 years ago,
2016, wasn't it?
16, yeah. So it was actually the first year we brought it back. My first Ice Ultra, and it was a very snowy, warm year, which is
it was.
we're 3 weeks out from our ice ultra this year, and it's looking like similar weather conditions after 2 years of some -40s. So I'm getting ready to take my flippers.
Yeah, I've already bought waders.
I'm gonna probably start swimming with you while I'm out there. And
God,
also,
yes.
Mimi's taken on a jungle and desert as well, so some great experience there. So do reach out to her, do follow her online. And Mimi, I hope whenever the next season comes along, we can bring you back and talk about the Inverness 500 and probably all the other adventures that you've been on with Pebbles and Sylvia.
I know.
Oh, God.
I know. How sad am I, aren't I? Name my bikes, but never mind.
I feel like it's a legitimate thing to do.
I would definitely have done that.
Yeah, a
Thank
bike,
you.
you can get emotional attachment to a bike, more so than trainers.
Yours would be a bit more up there. It would be like Face Puncher and War Bastard or something.
Really? That were the names in your mind?
For your bikes, off the top of my head.
Face War Bastard, I like that.
I don't know where that came from. Whatever box that came out of needs shutting
Put
again
that back
immediately.
away. Put that away. Well, whenever you get the next bike, Mimi, just consider it as a name.
It's there. You can have that for free. No trademark on that
Thanks.
at all.
I've written that one down. Yeah.
Okay, Mimi, have a great day. Thank you very much. And for
That's
all
a
of
pleasure.
you guys listening in, don't forget to leave us a review and all that jazz. Thanks to our sponsors, Big Moose.
Oh, yeah. Big
Go
moose.
grab your
Cheers,
coffee
Jeff.
and your merch from there. They're saving lives. And we'll see you next week. Mimi, thank you very much.